You're listening to the Paul Young Podcast.
So, welcome everyone to this first edition of the Paul Young Podcast. I'm glad both of you are listening in. Thank you, Linda. Just kidding. I know there are at least 3 of you. So let me tell you right off that this is not a high-end production studio type podcast. There are a lot of those out there and some that I like a lot, but nope, not this one. This is just Nico, short for Nicholas, one of our boys, and he and I created this in the basement of the barn. Nico graduated from Full Sail in film production and development, so we're not completely without expertise, so he is going to help do the technical stuff, the editing, adding music kinds of things. And that marvelous voice that you heard introducing the podcast, that is Amy, one of our daughters. I know that you're listening to this after March the 5th, but we recorded this mid-February, a couple days before Valentine's Day, and 2 days after Amy's due date with their second child, a boy, but he's stubborn, like his mom, and he won't come out to play. But then again, we wait. So there's just the 3 of us, and since Amy will have her hands full by the time you listen to this, really it's just Nico and I. I want to tell you the genesis of this whole podcast thing. It's quite interesting, actually. The start of it is that I have been asked a couple times to do the high-end production type of podcast with some wonderful folks who wanted to sink a lot of money, a lot of money into making it work. And both times, do you remember that story? It's in the Hebrew scriptures about the little shepherd boy, David. And here we go. One thing that you need to learn about me is, and if you don't know already, that I go down rabbit trails. And it's sort of this running joke between me and God. It's like, let me see how far down a rabbit trail I go and see if you can get me back. But it's kind of a cool thing. And I do it a lot. And I'm not trying to do it. My mind just does that. And I just start one place and I end up going like 3 other places before I end up back. But David... See, I'm back already. David, the shepherd boy, goes to visit his brothers on the front lines of a stalemate war with the Philistines, who are their mortal enemies. And he ends up volunteering to go out and fight the Philistine hero, this monster of a man named Goliath. So they take this shepherd boy and they dress him up in King Saul's armor, which is a huge honor. Like no one dresses up in the king's armor. And we already know that Saul is head and shoulders above everyone in Israel. So David could probably turn around in the armor without even taking it off. He probably looked like a little tank with no wheels. Now, I'm sure that everybody thought it was a good idea, but David didn't. He couldn't really move. He couldn't use his sling. They probably gave him a big sword that he could barely carry around. So when people started asking me about a high-end studio production podcast with lots of people who knew what they were doing regarding podcasts and how to distribute it, how to get sponsors, things like that, I felt completely out of place. After all, I'm just kind of a smelly little shepherd boy trying to put on King Saul's armor. Now, hear this clearly, there's nothing wrong with a high-end studio production podcast, but it simply isn't me. And it's not right for me. For me, it's way too complicated. It most likely is not going to work. So both times I turned the opportunities down. It's kind of like summer, it's not my favorite season because it has too many expectations. Sun's out, you need to go do stuff, you need to clean stuff, you need to build stuff. Autumn and winter are a lot simpler. Spring, not so simple. That's when the summer starts, at least doing the summer stuff starts. So this is going to be a podcast for simple people like me. Organic, unpredictable, sometimes funny, sometimes about losses and grief, lots about God and what it means to be a human being. Sometimes I think I'll probably read part of a book, a section, something that I'm reading or had just read and talk about why I like it and what really stuck with me. Or maybe about a movie that I watched or someone I met on the road. Or I'll report from a foreign country like Canada. Just kidding, I'm Canadian. But anyway, any place this crazy adventure takes me. If I meet someone in an airport or someone with a great story or someone sent me an inquiry or a comment or an email, and maybe it's somebody I think that you need to be aware of who's doing remarkable things. Or I might read you a daily devotional piece and see where that takes us. Or if someone sends me something important and special, I may talk to you about that. I might read it. I might comment. I'm not going after interviews per se, but who knows? One might come up. So I hope you're getting the idea. We don't have a clue what we're doing, but we're going to have a great time doing it. This is the sort of not for real podcast. And we're going to just let it grow in any way that it does. In other words, you won't have any idea of what we're going to do on any given day. And I think that sounds like a blast. Now, I'm also aware that some of the topics we talk about might make you mad. And that's okay. I'm not perfect. Everything I think I can guarantee is not all right. But I'm old enough and I've thought a lot about things and I've grown enough and I've experienced enough that I think it's going to be worth the conversation. And everybody's welcome here. If you like trolling, you're welcome here. We're not going to build a comment section somewhere so that you can come in and comment publicly. There's enough of that out there. We will hopefully have a website that you can find, and at that it'll be the paulyoungpodcast.com. And on the landing page, hopefully, there will be a link that will allow you to comment, to communicate with us, to make inquiries, to ask questions, to tell us stories. And then we're going to hopefully have a place that allows you to put in your name and email, and that will allow us to communicate with you, to let you know when a new podcast drops and we're not going to sell anybody's information. We're just not smart enough to do that. But the website will give you access to things like a resource page or liner notes for a podcast, contact information if we're talking about someone that we think is important for you to know. And if it resonates with you in a particular way, what they're doing, then with their permission, we'll connect you somehow. So that's the sort of thing. We don't know for sure, but we want to build it out. And so here's the plan. Starting today, March 5th, 2024, unless something completely caught us by surprise, which is entirely within the realm of reason, we're planning to drop a new 10 to 15 minute podcast starting today every Tuesday and every Friday. We'll try to announce it ahead of time on social media, which I also basically know nothing about, but Nico does, thankfully. And this website that we haven't even started building yet, hopefully will be in place by March the 5th. So at least you can go there, sign up with your email and all that stuff, and we can communicate back to you. It's not about branding. It's not about platform. That's a Saul's armor kind of thing. It's not about advertising. Oh, get this. If I understand right, if we get enough followers, there are people who will sponsor the podcast. I don't know if I'll do that or not, but I even heard that if you let them sponsor, and that's kind of an advertising thing, they might pay you or at least send you some of their products. So Kim wants me to get Mercedes to sponsor us. That'd be so funny. And they'll never do it. But anyway, I can tell you that if we ever do sponsor, we do the sponsor thing, it will be folks and products that I actually like. And that's an adventure in itself. So that's sort of the plan. 10 to 15 minutes twice a week, and we'll try to post it. Also, on the website, there will be a resource area where we'll have links to people and resources that will help you. From there, we'll just continue to build out as we need to the website. I was talking to a friend of mine, another Linda, just yesterday, and she was telling me about some folks that she has gotten to know really well. And she's older than I am by about a decade. I've known her since before Kim and I were married. And she has become someone that is wise, and her compassion has really blossomed, especially for the houseless folks. They're not homeless. They've got a home, but and a sense of home a lot of times. Unfortunately, a lot of people who live on the streets and in cardboard boxes and in tents, they don't really even have a home. They have a place that they sleep, but not a home that they belong to, except for the communities that they're a part of, but not everybody. And she has begun to build relationships with the houseless folks. And one of the couples that is houseless, about 15 months ago, parked outside her church, small little church, and kind of upset the apple cart, because that particular church likes to form it's a committee. That's what it is. They like to form a committee so that then they can talk about it. And it's usually not a committee for people in the area. It's a committee for somewhere else in the world so that they can put together some money or whatever. But this was a houseless couple who lived in their vehicle just, I think it was on the church property, but just outside the church. Well, that has begun to transform that church as relationships started to happen. Now, last Thanksgiving, there was a potluck, and the pastor invited this couple to come, and they didn't, but the pastor and some others put together a big meal, meals that would last them a whole day, Thanksgiving meals. And then at Christmas, on Christmas Eve, they invited this couple to come in and just celebrate Christmas with everybody. And the man, in coming into that church, said, "This is the first time I've been inside a church for 40 years," and he's 52. Well, his partner, spouse, has been really sick, really sick. And just the night before I had the conversation with Linda, had died. And so Linda has been a part of all of that, part of their journey, part of those relationships. And he's asked Linda to do the funeral service, which is an incredible honor if you think about it. And Linda is going to do that. She says a whole bunch of his family are going to be there. He had the opportunity growing up to become a really good musician. But, the addictions got him and some other things, and he just didn't have the ability to follow through on that. And if there's anything we can learn from that, is that we don't know the whole story. When we see any human being, we don't know the whole story. When we hear about somebody that did something and it was destructive and harmful, we don't know the whole story. We don't know what people are struggling with. We don't know what they bring to the table. We just like to use our assumptions to make a judgment about them. And we've got to stop doing that, because that makes it easy for us not to even enter into a conversation or the beginnings of a relationship. Anyway, the night she died, the hospital called and said, "Are there any organs that you would like to, donate?" And he got a little angry and he said, "There are no organs that she has that are worth donating, except." And so midnight that night, her corneas were transplanted into a 5-year-old little girl, so that she could see things that they hadn't been able to see but had always wanted to see. That there would be a kind of new life for her. And the other thing that I wanted to tell you about them was that Linda asked them, "Why do you wear your wedding rings on your index finger?" Because most of us, it's on the ring finger. But they wore theirs on their index finger. And his response was, so that anytime we pointed a finger at the other person, we would instantly see the ring that meant we had a covenant with each other. I've never heard of anybody doing that. That's got to be one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. Because, in our anger and in our difficulties with each other, we point the finger, and usually we forget the covenant. We forget the promises that we made to love in sickness and in health. All the covenantal promises that are not dependent on the other person's performance. But they always had the covenant right on their pointer finger. I just think that's incredible. So that's what we did today. That's enough for today. And again, we don't know where this is going to go. Have no idea, but it's going to be fun, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be at times full of grief and loss and love and kindness. It's a table that all are welcome to. Thank you for listening. If you would like to connect with us with inquiries, comments, suggestions, stories, and more, please go to paulyoungpodcast.com. There you're going to find resources and any notes related to any particular podcast. Today, participate with love, do the next right thing, and trust the ripples.